to Chris in writing, so I don't know how we adjust that. Maybe just make notes of it. Unless Andrew Locke is proposing to take over Safe Parks, which I'm very happy for them to do.
Actually, you, Paul, and Pumi don't need to be voted again because you're already on for another year.
Yeah, that's so I've only been on for about a year, so okay, that's fine. Good.
So it's like a two-year rolling thing.
All right.
It's 2 years. It's 2 years rolling. It's very complicated, but it's nice and simple, and it allows us to add the committee to add at least 5 more people.
Okay.
Essentially by option.
So now we wait for residents to join.
Can we get thumbnails of people who join?
We've got 30 participants at this point, from what I can see, but that's including us.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you ask, Cheryl?
Could we get thumbnails down the side of participants, or will we only ever see the panel's thumbnails?
So if you click on, if you click on participants, you can see attendees on the right-hand side, and there's all the attendees.
You see the names only.
Yeah, we're up to 35 now.
Okay.
Fine. We have a quorum.
Fantastic.
Over to you, Cheryl.
Right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is our first virtual AGM. Hopefully it'll be efficient. While we've been going the tech route for quite some time, quite a number of years, this is the first time we've resorted to a VC for an AGM. Let's hope it works really well. We want to keep this as simple as possible. The reports have been up on the website for you to view. You're welcome to go and view them during the meeting or even afterwards, if that's your inclination. We've got a very simple order of business to get through. We first need to discuss and approve the financials as proposed. We then need to look at appointing auditors for the year to come. We need to elect committee members, and then we will open the floor to questions from attendees to the meeting. And you can post your questions in the facilities below. So it won't be a matter of hands up and hoping to be noticed. And with that, I think we'd like to move, if possible, swiftly on to our financials. One thing I did forget is Tim Trulak, who's our ward councillor, is here as well. Tim, of course, you're welcome to throw in a few comments towards the end of the meeting before we take questions from the floor, if there is anything that we need to know about specifically. So, Jan, may I hand it over to you to discuss financials. Jan is our financial office bearer.
Thank you, Cheryl. So I've only taken over as on the finance portfolio in the last few months, and therefore the Vaughan Nisbet has been dealing with annual financial statements and the audit for the past year. So he would be able to take us through the report as it is. So Vaughan, would you please take us through the annual financial statement?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Cheryl. Rather than just read the document to you, which is already on the web page, I thought I would just go through some of the salient points, and if there's any questions, I can take them from there. From a member's point of view, I would imagine that the state of the funding of the organization is probably the most important. And from the financials, you can see that the surplus has gone down marginally from 2019 to 2020 by some 30,000 Rand. And that's made up of some components. The big ones are that the Safe Parks contributions increased from last year to this year by 242,000, but the Safe Parks costs went up by 247,000 over the previous year. And the big changes in those costs were we had an expense of repairs and maintenance for 27,000 for the year, and that was primarily our contribution to PRABOA Ratepayers Association for keeping the spraits clean and tidy. That has not carried on because they didn't want more funds, so that stopped, and it won't be an ongoing expense. And then the other fairly large expense in last year was the increase in the retainer for the town planner, Edward, and that was 29,000 increase over the previous year. And I guess with the current projects in hand, that's going to go up a lot more. But the reality is, with the funds that we have on hand and the future expenditure as we understand it to be, we're probably going to be breaking even on a go-forward basis. And that includes the trial to accelerate of 10,000 Rand, the commitment for 6 months. So that's really as far as the trading or the surplus account is concerned. The other point to note is that we've managed to get all of the tax returns up to date, which is an important milestone in the path to trying to get the contributions to be counted as a donation in the donor's hands so that they can get some tax relief from that. But we've still got a way to go to get to that point. But it is currently up to date and all has been submitted. So those are the major points that I see. If there's any questions, I can take them.
Okay, and if I can remind people, please, to post your questions in the chat, Ryan, or do you prefer in the queue?
Can someone try and post a question in the Q&A? I think it's open, but I'm not sure. So if somebody could try and post a question in the Q&A, and then we can take questions. Alternatively, okay, good. Yeah, okay. James Bernstein and Lindsay Berger have tried to ask questions, and we can see them.
Thanks, guys.
So individuals, yeah. Okay, thanks for that.
Right. Are there any questions regarding the financial statements? Or if not, we'll leave it for 1 minute. If not, if attendees could kindly propose and second the financials and post that, please, in the Q&A. Tim says he cannot post a Q&A question.
No, so panelists can't pose questions. So I think panelists just speak up if you would like to say something.
Or post in chat, Tim.
Panelists can only post in chat.
All right. Thank you. Devon Ashman has proposed the financials. What is the difference between services of the town planner versus accelerated services? Very briefly, and please, Edward and Ryan, if you'd like to add to what I have to say. Essentially, the town planner looks very much at technical town planning related applications that are made. We comment in terms of land usage, densities, all of those sorts of things, whereas accelerate is an actual physical service in terms of improving cleanliness and management of the physical space. But Edward and Brian, if you'd like to add to that.
I mean, Edward, maybe go ahead. I see Christopher Harris is also on the call from Accelerate.
Yes.
So maybe Christopher can, I mean, Edward can introduce, or Christopher, do you want to go first and then Edward?
I think I'll just start off if that's okay. But just very simply from my side, the services of a town planner would be primarily towards the private space as it relates to the zoning. So basically in terms of the individual properties, if they want to change the land use or the zoning or do any objections, the function of Accelerate Services would be as a public space management service, relates to cleaning, security, and use of the public space rather than the private space. I hope that maybe helps a bit.
Absolutely.
I can add. I agree with what has just been said. The retainer agreement between myself and PRABOA basically is for the sake of being available whenever you need me for town planning related advice. So whenever there's an issue or a question as far as town planning is concerned, or whenever there's an application that you become aware of, it will be referred to me and I will give you feedback. In other words, I will tell you what the background is, what the policy is, how the council probably will deal with it. And then the arrangement is that as soon as that becomes more specific work, in other words, if we now look at an issue and it is necessary to actually submit a document or a proposal or any type of submission to the council on behalf of PRABOA, then that will be done on a basis of me providing a quotation for the additional work. So I'm available for questions all the time, and I will answer those questions whenever it comes up. But whenever it develops into something more tangible in terms of submissions and preparations and whatever, then I will provide a quotation.
Thank you. While we've been out, we've had a seconder for the financials, Natalie Zimmerman, on chat. Thank you. I hope, Marianne, that your question has been answered satisfactorily in terms of the financials. Are there any further questions related to the items mentioned in the financials? Okay, great. I think we can take those as accepted. Thank you, everyone. The next point of order is to appoint...
Sorry, Cheryl. Maybe just at this point, it's also appropriate to thank Vaughan for his service in the last year.
Indeed.
He is leaving Parkhurst. So Vaughan, thank you very much for your contribution and your effort to get us to this point of the financial statements.
100%.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking over. Greatly appreciated that. Right, our next matter is to appoint auditors for the current financial year. If there are any proposals...
Sorry, Cheryl, Natalie's got her hand up. Natalie, did you mean to stick your hand up? Do you want to talk? Actually, we can allow you to talk if you would like to. Oh, sorry, I'll just wait for Natalie to respond. Sorry, Cheryl.
No problem. She said no, exclamation mark.
No. Sorry, Chris Diamond, if I may say on the issue of auditors, we rightly have to put this through to the annual general meeting so that if the meeting decides, they can appoint the auditors, but may we suggest that you leave it to the committee, and in the absence of a resolution at the annual general meeting, the committee can then negotiate with potential auditors to find someone who will do an adequate job at a reasonable price.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, that was to be the suggestion. So unless there are any specific suggestions, which we will then take away, or the newly elected committee will take away and consider, we will be happy to proceed.
With respect, Cheryl, the committee will happily take any suggestions either now or later, or offers, and I would say my view is that the auditor is entitled to a professional fee if they're professionally qualified, as they have to be. But we will listen at any time to a suggestion of people we should appoint as auditors.
Absolutely. Yes, I think that is taken as given. All right. I see no comments or questions around that. I think we minute that the attendees are happy for us to proceed, or the newly elected committee to proceed with identifying and appointing an appropriate auditor for the current financial year. Thank you very much. Before we move on to the election of new committee members for the year ahead, I'd just like to express once again a very great thanks to the people who effectively ran Parkhurst during this past year. Firstly, I think the thing that people mostly take note of is the security and the safety portfolio. Marius, who gave over to Mike during the course of the year. Both people have done an incredibly difficult job under trying circumstances. None of us could have predicted the year that we've had. So for them and for everything that they've brought to the table, thank you very much to Ryan for his support, especially getting Accelerate onto the table. Kundai, Chris, Gabriella and Emma and Kath before them. Paul for all the work around Verity Park. And Paul, you might like to say something a bit later. Yeah, Richard for joining us. Tim, of course, I think Tim knows that he's highly valued by the committee in terms of the insight that he brings. Jan and Vaughan. And then, you know, we've had additional people join us as well, Andrew, Mark, Pumi, etc. So to everyone who's done what they've done in their individual portfolios, be that around safety, be it around environment, be it around trying to get the word of the committee out, thank you very much. This community wouldn't be the same without you.
And right. If I could add, Cheryl, just briefly, I mean, obviously, I think it's worth, you know, as Vaughan is leaving, Marius will remain involved, but we have to thank Marius for his time now that he's standing down and has handed over to me. And I know he looks 25 years younger because of it. So next time, but Marius, thank you very much for the last 6 or 7 years that you gave to this portfolio.
Yes, thank you, Marius. I must say, Marius, you look like you're almost ready for your 21st birthday party by now. You've relaxed. Okay. Ryan, would you like to bring up the proposed people for election? Essentially, what happens is people are elected on a 2-year basis, on a rotating 2-year basis, and obviously people will fall away as they move away and will come into the committee as they move into the community. Essentially what we've got up for your consideration are the people who have now served 2 years and are up for re-election. If you choose not to elect any of them, please go ahead. If you have any comments, please let us know. And I see there is a Q&A and there's a chat. Here, Natalie, thank you. And in terms of chats, yes, via the poll. Would you like to talk to the poll?
Yep, so you should see at the bottom of your screen a poll. So if you could just click on it, and if you would like to vote for everybody, then please tick everybody. To carry on with the work on the committee. And I think we put out a call constantly for new volunteers. So if anybody would like to get involved, please just get in touch with Cheryl, ideally, and that her email address is chair@parkhurst and she will pass on, that's in the chat, her email address. And so please do get involved, or stick your hand up and make yourself known as well. We always, all of us are very, very happy to hand over to if anybody else would like to help. So please do get in touch.
Ryan, may I contradict you? I usually do. Please, if you can't get hold of Cheryl, please get hold, if you want to help, even though you might not want to be elected to the committee, get hold of any committee member who will pass your name on and willingly try to find somewhere where you can be useful. At the moment, both our architects have retired, so we need people to look at building plans and see if they cause any problems. Contact any committee member, and we'll see what we can do to use as much time as you can afford.
Thank you, Chris. Well put. Ryan, are you able to read to us the poll results? Or can you tell how many have voted?
I think there are about 20 votes for pretty much everybody, almost. So I think, I don't know what that means. So I think, 26 of 41 people have voted, and most people have 20 votes. So I guess that's almost a majority.
More than half.
I can't vote, so I will add my vote to everybody as well. To maybe push
just a reminder to everyone, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a poll, although I've voted, so mine's gone.
Yeah, mine too.
If you haven't yet voted, you'll still be able to see a poll icon at the bottom of your screen. If you could please just complete that. We'll leave it another 2 or 3 minutes. And then what we can do along while we're waiting for the polls to come in, if you do have any questions to be answered, we've already had one around the shuttle borer, which we can raise again, but you can start typing your questions in advance into the Q&A session so long. Yeah, and Ryan, you can let us know when we get up to, say, 25, 30 of the 40 participants.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, I'm hesitant to bleed one agenda item into the next, but perhaps for the sake of keeping it flowing and not keeping this going too long and all of us staring at a screen rather awkwardly, it might be appropriately to do that. Tim, possibly. Yes, Chris?
May I say, with respect, you're guilty of Trumpism. If the total number of attendees is 42, and you've got over 22 votes in favour, then it's impossible for the new people to be defeated. So you might just as well get over and declare it and formally move it to the next item.
Okay, it
Contra,
is.
Just hoping to have people's voices heard.
Everybody is over 22, but I'll just leave it open. I mean, it doesn't make a huge difference.
All right. Well, we shall then consider the re-election affected. So thank you, everyone. But that does not mean the polls have closed. You're welcome to keep voting until the end of the meeting. Before we move into Q&As, Tim, are there any issues that you'd like to raise on a macro level? Tim is our ward councillor, for those who don't know. PRABOA, whilst it is an apolitical structure, and we are very vigilant around that, we obviously do work with our ward councillor in terms of delivering services to the neighbourhood. as best as possible. And Tim has been awesome in that regard in keeping us up to date in terms of what's going on and what is possible and what might not be possible. Tim, over to you.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, you cannot do this job without a good set of resident associations that help you out. And whether they are resident associations or church groups or some management districts like we got in Rosebank and now we have in Parkhurst, it's all part of the community that has to come together to work, to try and get the city to work, because the city is not working at the moment very well. And we try and hold them to account where we can. And otherwise, we try and find workarounds to get things done. So thank you for the committee and all your support. And I really like the way the committee's going. I think getting Edward on board is fantastic. Getting the guys from Accelerate on board is really great. They're going to make a big difference to the area. And I've seen the difference that Accelerate makes in Rosebank. And remember, it almost died in Rosebank a few years ago because the whole city improvement district idea collapsed because of a court challenge. And we had to really regrow Rosebank from virtually nothing. And it's made a massive difference there. And I think Ryan, one of the prime drivers of that, actually works in Rosebank. And he saw the difference they're making. And that's why he really drove the process to get it into here. So that's really a really good way of getting your high street and working with the traders as well, because it's not just us as residents, it's traders and the people who work and live and play in our suburb. They all go to what makes Parkhurst Parkhurst. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks to all the members of the Resident Association, and it's going to be an exciting year. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks very much, Tim. Just stay on because one of our questions was around the shot hole borer. So just in terms of, you know, what is going on with that at the moment? Are there any advances? I think largely Parkhurst has resorted to having street by street deciding what they want to do and what they want to try out. What is the status of the infection?
So at the moment, there's no cure for the shot hole borer. What some streets have done is they've managed to stave it off a bit by getting one of the a proper arborist, not a fly-by-night, a proper arborist involved who will charge, I think, 200-300 rand a household to treat the trees in the streets, and that will extend the life. Obviously, the plane trees maybe not as much. They go first. The oak trees certainly are not going to survive very long, but the maples and the gold liquid ambers, etc., they will survive a lot longer once they get treated. The main aim. What's going to happen is they're going to have to be removed as they die and taken out. But the problem is there's nowhere to store them. So one of the solutions that we've come up with, and City Parks have agreed, and they've approached Joburg Property Company, who have agreed as well, that they're going to Joburg Property Company is going to let City Parks use the old soccer field where currently we have a lot of vagrants living there, waste pickers, etc. And they will use that for the solarization site where they will chip the wood and cover it in plastic. And over several months, the sun will bake through the plastic, kill 90% of the bugs. And then that wood can be used for mulching, selling on to landscape architects or putting into compost. And they will also keep that area clear of people living there who shouldn't be living there. So that's until that happens, and I'm hoping it should happen in the next few months, hopefully early next year, then there'll be somewhere to take the wood, and they can then start trimming, cutting the trees, the street trees. Again, not all the trees have to be cut down, but some of the branches have to be trimmed off. But once a tree has reached roughly 40% of canopy dieback, it can't really be saved. And the same thing, if you can, you'll see some of the plane trees, especially in Parktown North and Rosebank, very, very spotted on their trunks. And I think it was one of the walkabouts we did in Parkhurst with one of the tree experts said, if you can't put your hands anywhere on that trunk without touching one of those holes, that tree's also pretty much toast. So it's going to take several years for them to die back. Treating them will help and preserve some of the canopy, and then there'll be a period of planting new ones. Once we know which ones are suitable to plant. And again, you can't plant the whole area out with one tree. You know, stinkwoods in my street, 16th Street, don't really get infected. But if you plant the whole suburb out with stinkwoods, a stinkwood bug will come along in a few years and wipe them all out. You've got to have a kind of a mix of trees. So we don't know what that mix is yet. So stay tuned.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Thanks very much. Okay, we've had another question as to what number of residential business interests are domiciled in Parkhurst, and extension to question what number contribute to this association. So from when Vumatel got rolled out, there are in the order of around 2,200, 2,300 urban in Parkhurst. So we could largely say a little bit under 2,500 entities, because of course some, in terms of businesses, there are often more than one business on a particular earth. And Chris and or Mike, you might confirm that I think that the total contributions to the association, which happen by virtue of your Safe Parks membership, so the total number that come in through the two different ways that you can contribute is in the region of about 45%, but I do stand to be corrected. It might be a bit under that, about 40%.
Yes, about 40%.
About 40%, yeah.
Yeah.
Just so that those who are listening are aware, that's relatively low penetration. I mean, it's been pretty stable at about 40% for certainly as long as I've been aware of the scheme. Chris, you could correct me if I'm wrong. There hasn't been a lot of significant growth there. Part of the plans to address that come from the appointment by Cortac of a new salesperson that's going to be dedicated to the role. We're hoping that Accelerate have a role to play in terms of getting the 4th Avenue traders organized and all contributing more fairly to that. But the reality is that 40%, frankly, is too low for the costs of the scheme. And whilst we are financially sound for now and probably at round about break even, any further increases, which we have to expect are going to come. We've been able to negotiate no increase this year, just given the impact of COVID. But I think it's going to be quite a hard discussion. Vaughan, you'd be closer to this given your history. It's going to be a relatively hard discussion next year, and really is going to require a solid effort from the residents of Parkhurst to get on board with Safe Parks. I mean, it's up to us to communicate that and the benefits of it far better than we have been doing, is my opinion, and we will be working on that. But the reality is 40% needs to get closer to 60% for this to be, I think, beneficial, particularly when you consider the additional costs that the VumaCam rollout will mean in future.
Yeah, if I can make the point, if we got an extra, say, 200 people, the costs of the Safe Park security wouldn't increase that much, so that would be enough to probably be enough to prevent any increases for the next year. Probably. But we need you to encourage people to change over to Safe Parks.
Yeah, I think for those of you who are new to the community, and Grant McPherson, I'll be getting to your question next, but yeah, it is a bit of a, it's the standard chicken and egg sort of thing. So we need to contribute so that we can provide better services. We can't provide better services until people contribute, but people want to see the better services before contributing. So some of us just need to take a stand and make that contribution, as tough as it is. But I think it's a nice segue into Grant's question. He has said, hi all, I'm relatively new to the community. Thanks for the work you've put in by the new committee and members. So yes, thank you to Grant. He has 3 questions. 1, can you elaborate on what making 4th Avenue a managed precinct involves? 2, I've heard that the Spraits has a jump in petty crime. Is this community involved in adding to that security? And 3, perhaps a question for Tim, are we constantly having issues with our substation? Are there any plans to upgrade or fix it? Thanks again. So I think Chris and Ryan, perhaps you might like to talk to the first question of what making 4th Avenue a managed precinct actually means. And then Mike and to a lesser extent, Marius, you perhaps could address the issue of security along the Spruit. It is an integrated approach to security. So Parkhurst security is not independent of the Spruit. And then Tim, you might like to address the substation after
that. Shall I go first? Chris?
Yes, absolutely, Chris.
Perfect. So in terms of transforming the 4th Avenue into a managed precinct, what that essentially means, and Tim mentioned it a little bit earlier, that at the moment, certain aspects of the city is maybe not running the way we would like it to be. And additionally, we want to have the property owners coming together to be part of that solution. So where we have issues like crime, where we have issues like cleanliness, on top of that, where we have infrastructure situations where potholes aren't being attended to, water leaks aren't being repaired, roads aren't being painted, perhaps street lights are out or power outages, that's kind of where a managed precinct comes into play. So for those who are on the call, I'm not sure who are aware of how a managed precinct works or not, but very simple and very similar to PRABOA. It's where the property owners contribute towards services in the area. So as was mentioned, in terms of places like Rosebank, places like Sandton, in the CBD, we have places like Bromfontein, Southwestern Improvement District, where the funds from the property owners come together to pay for things such as a security service, public space security service, which is to keep the people safe, keep the businesses safe, to try and deter petty crime and serious criminal activity as well. On top of that, it goes towards something like a cleaning service, where litter that's on the streets or leaves that have fallen onto the ground, basically the broken window theory from Rudy Giuliani, which is where you make the place look good, the property values do well, the tenants and the rentals do well, and the area does well. On top of that, it goes down to, as you mentioned, City of Johannesburg management, pick it up management, making sure that we try and make them adhere to the SLAs that they have as best as possible, fixing potholes, painting roads, fixing street lights, and overall making it a better experience for the people who use the space, which tends to help out the shops and the retail and also the residential and the landlords who invest in the area. So I think that's very much the overview of what we kind of look to do when we turn the area into a managed precinct. Any follow-up questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Yeah, Ryan, I don't know if you want to add anything to that at all.
No, I mean, no, but I mean, the idea is overall is not just for Accelerate to help 4th Avenue, but although that is a major part of this, to try and make sure that we fix up all the crime and the grime, but also more widely in the precinct. So anybody in the community can ask Accelerate to follow up on any sort of infrastructure related issue as well. And you can do that by sending an email to eugene.nyetsani. I'll pop it into the chat at accelerate.co.za. And you can say, look, I've logged a problem in my street with City Power or with JRA or with any of the others. Please, Accelerate, can you follow up? And in my experience, they're extremely good with us in Rosebank, where I work, and if you and Tim and they work with Tim and they work with all the various city entities, and they're very good at this kind of thing. So we've got high hopes for this particular project.
Terrific, thank you. Mike and perhaps Marius, would you like to address the issue of the jump in petty crime along the Spruit?
Marius, I'll let you handle this as your final contribution.
Okay, people should be able to hear me now. Unfortunately, it is a fact that there's a lot of crime events around the Spruit area, and it's not only related to Parkhurst. Right through or neighboring suburbs to the Bromford and Spruit, there's a lot of illegal and informal settlements. It's a function perhaps which was enhanced by COVID and all the unemployment in our country. And obviously we're doing the best we can. Cortac, as the security provider of safe parks, works together with all the other security companies around the area, works with SAPS, Parkview and JMPD to do what can be done. But unfortunately, the enforcement of the bylaws by authorities are not always what it should be. And there's no short-term solution to really make that area crime-free. It will also help if residents and people who are visiting those areas basically consider the protocols and the guidances that is often in our newsletters and in all other publications about when to walk, how to walk, what not to do, and so forth. But the crime around the Spruit area is not going to disappear overnight. It is what it is. There's no golden solution overnight to implement there.
If I could just add to that.
I wouldn't just make it a Parkhurst problem. It's a much wider problem than that.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think further to what Tim mentioned about the solarization site, I think that will have a benefit in terms of the amount of potential criminals that sort of loiter on the Spruit. Another problem that we have is with the old Parkhurst Bowling Club, and Tim would be able to tell you better than I that has been almost impossible to fix. But these are sort of known hotspots. There's a seasonal aspect to what's going on the Spruit, and obviously an economic one given the COVID and the lockdown. And I'm afraid that is a reality. There's I wouldn't say a completely integrated approach amongst all of the suburbs that adjoin the Spruit. But there are joint operations that happen from time to time. Frankly, there's just not the resources or the money to be able to police the Spruit to the level that is probably required.
Mike, this is the final comment on this point I want to make, that if more of our residents and obviously our business owners is also becoming involved, contribute to the scheme, the more we can try and implement more resources to actually patrol that area, because that's one of probably the most effective solutions is to have a dedicated presence at the Spruit area. Cortac does already try and patrol that area quite frequently, but we cannot actually deploy all our resources from limited money and which we get from residents just to make the Spruit secure and open up our houses for crime.
Thank you, Marius. Tim would like to address the issue of the substation.
Yeah, just get back to the Spruit quickly. There's also Jersey Trails, which was set up to manage the trails around the Delta Park area. And they kind of, it's not their remit really, but they kind of coordinate a lot of the work going on the Spruit, because it's different communities, the Victory Park community, the Delta guys, us in Parkhurst, the Craigwell Park guys, even right down to William Nicol. They're working with the guys down at the Santafield and Study area. And then of course up at Emerentia. So it's kind of a coordinated approach, but as Marius said, some of the resident associations actually let the side down a little bit, but also some areas are worse than others. So the Emerentia area below the dam is worse, under the bridges are worse, etc. It's not an easy solution, but we're trying different things. So keep your eyes peeled on the Isla Parkhurst and the Ward 117 group and the Jersey Trails Facebook groups, and we'll see what happens there. With regard to the substation, actually it's not the substation's fault. The substation trips, but it's not the actual sub that's the problem. It's the kind of wiring that takes the electricity from the substation to our houses. So there's two kinds there, and mostly the thing that causes the problem for these big trips is what they call a medium voltage fault. And those are buried cables, many of them very, very, very old. And when we put Vumatel in, we discovered how old some of them were. They've kind of got a wax paper around them. And when Vumatel dug down 0.5 meter to put the new cables in and then filled it in again, the water managed to infiltrate down into those trenches and actually get into all the cracks on the old paper. And we had terrible outages when Vumatel were there. And so what's happening now, especially with all the digging, various things from fiber to water to gas. It's weakening the soil in the sidewalks, which allows the water to get into these old cables. So all those old cables essentially need replacing, and it's a really big problem. They did it at Roosevelt Park. The whole Roosevelt Park refurb was not just the substation. It was all the cabling, the medium voltage cabling that went out. And then some of the, quite a lot of the mini substations where in Parkhurst, we have these little brick kiosks with doors that sometimes hang open, and they've got to be reported to keep them closed because they're nice and warm and people live in them and then they cause problems. But essentially it's the infrastructure that's bad. So it's the overhead cables as well that takes the medium voltage through those substations, the little substations on our streets, down to our overhead cables that then take the power to us. So I think about a year and a half ago, we started getting a lot of our overhead cables replaced. I know in my street, 16th Street, pretty much I think all the streets in Parkhurst got them done. But then the connections from the overhead cables down to the poles, and then down the poles and then to your houses. They're the things that go now. So often things trip, and you sit there for 2-3 days while you don't have a technician that comes and just flicks the switch, and then it trips again because it gets wet when it rains, or a branch touches the wire, shorts it out. So those are the problems. And so what happens is when the medium voltage cable goes, it trips at the substation, and it's Parkhurst subs tripped again. But it's actually not the sub, it's what's going on between the sub and your house. And then you have the small areas, like you have like one street or half a street or several houses, and that's where it trips actually at those little kiosks, and they're being replaced slowly but surely with, you'll see kind of boxes, metal boxes on the sidewalk. And then as the kiosks fail, they then put these boxes in, and the kiosks no longer work as a substation. And we have to watch those because that's where street people hang out and sleep in. So that's the problem. I don't know what is happening now. Now we've got a new mayor and a new mayoral committee, etc., running the city. Because of COVID, everything is up in the air. And it's not just COVID. We had a change in the Joburg round about November last year. Christmas came along, and everything closed down in Joburg over Christmas. January came along, things are just starting to wake up, and COVID hit us. So really, for a year, we haven't really had a plan of what is going on. And this is the problem with all the entities. It's City Power, Joburg Water, City Parks, what are the other one? Joburg Roads is an absolute disaster. They're working at the third capacity that they should be. So only 1/3 of the people are working. There's no tar. I haven't had tar for about a year because the asphalt machine, actually it's an Italian asphalt machine. Nobody can understand the instructions. And then they can't get the ingredients that go into making the asphalt. So we don't have asphalt. And then the city then has a real procurement problem in trying to buy it in. So we can't get our potholes. We can't get our reinstatements done. Reinstatements are where typically Joburg Water fixed the burst pipe, and now somebody's got to go in and put the tar back. That is not happening. There's, I think, 90,000 potholes in Joburg that haven't been done, and there's in the region of about 70,000 reinstatements, about 20,000 reinstatements every month that are not being done. And you can see the result when you drive around in the city. And we are trying very, very hard to get them done. We're asking questions. We're trying to hold our depot to account, and we're getting a few. We got 7 fixed in Parkhurst the other day, 3 fixed in Parktown North, but there's 60 or 70 of them in the ward that need doing. So it's very tough at the moment. Things are not working well in the city, and we don't know where our leadership is taking us. So stay tuned again. We should know more and more as the year progresses, as next year starts again.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. We don't have any further open questions on the chat. Are there any other questions that people would like to raise? Otherwise, we can call the meeting to a close and the elected committee can remain to elect office bearers.
Actually, Cheryl, there was just a question about whether it's possible to get kind of ParkSec or information packs to just for street captains to distribute to.
Yeah, that was on the panel.
Yeah. Has it been answered?
It hasn't been answered. I think if I could just say that in terms of our tie-up with Andrew Lockett as sort of the marketing communications, we've identified that as a need and a requirement urgently. Yeah. There are a couple of things going on there. The sort of the falling away of the old ParkSec sort of brand has been discussed. The implementation of sort of a safe parks only policy. There needs to be communication around that, and there needs to be some fairly standardized and relatively easy communication material that street captains can use, that estate agents can use, and various other players. So that is on the agenda, yes.
Okay. Perfect. If there is no further business, I think we can declare the meeting closed. Thank you everyone for attending. It's got to be one of the more efficient meetings at under an hour. So thank you, everyone. We can all go and have some supper and a glass of wine or whatever it is that tickles your fancy. Thanks for sharing these results, Ryan. Thank you very much. And we shall see you in cyberspace, I guess, everyone. You know how to see you.
Thank you. Thanks
so much, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks everyone. Okay, bye-bye.